Guys, Dasha is lazy enough to start the next session. Seriously. Alona, are you
Alona, are you
here?
here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Okay,
Okay,
Dasha,
Dasha,
you're
you're
welcome.
welcome.
And this is not true at all, actually. I was just joining. I was in the process. This is unfair. Anna makes me work. It's Sunday today. I'm sorry. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the final session of the conference. And actually, I can't believe that. I mean, it's the second day and it's the final session. Like, how come? How come? And I think you are going to love this session because Alona, I think, is a super energetic person. And this is the person I imagine should be working with kids, obviously, just people like Alona. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a teacher trainer, a methodologist, and a person who has really contributed a lot to language education, even at a national level here in Ukraine, as a member of the Foreign Language Education Working Group with Ukraine's Ministry of Education initiative, Education for Life, which I think is really, really important. And Alona is a person who has been working with kids a lot and knows maybe everything about them. So please prepare your questions and welcome Alona Lytovchenko. You're loud applause. You have a fan here, Alona.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. First of all, good afternoon, dear colleagues, and thank you for joining my session today. I appreciate you spending a part of your precious weekend with me. And I would also like to thank Daria and Anna for having me today at this wonderful event and giving me the floor and providing me with an opportunity to share at least some part of my experience and maybe in this way making life of very young learners teachers a little bit easier, right? So do hope so. Okay, guys, so please save your questions to the end of the session. I will be able to answer all of them. I'm afraid that the session is a little bit packed. That's why I might not have an opportunity to read all of your questions just on the go. But anyway, so before we start, a couple of words about me. As Daria has already kindly introduced me, you know that I'm a teacher for very young learners. Very, very young learners, I would even say. I've been teaching English as a foreign language for about 20 years, like more than 20 years for now. Very young learners and young learners are my particular focus. This is the category of learners that I've been teaching for a long, 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 long time. It doesn't mean that I'm focused on teaching young learners and very young learners solely, but still this is the age category that I'm recently focused on and have been focusing for a long time. So a couple of words about my certifications. I possess IHCTL, which is a SALTA from International House World Organization, IHCYLT, which my colleagues jokingly name INSULT. And this certification is aimed at training teachers to teach very young learners. So, well, probably there is some association in the naming of the certification itself, as far as I can feel. Right. And I also have Delta all three modules. I completed my last third module last year. And as you probably know, the third module is focused on creating a course for target audience. So my target audience was very young learners, and I created a course for them promoting their speaking through storytelling. Just a small, like a small piece of information about that. And as Daria has already kindly mentioned, that I was a group of experts among the experts who were working on a new concept for new Ukrainian school, cooperating with subcontracted, I would say, by a Ukrainian Ministry of Education. So those are a couple of words about myself, just to raise my credibility. And now let's see what's going on here, what will be going on here today. Just a sec, yeah. think I do it like this. Right, so where are we going today? Our session will be built in the following way. We're going to talk about today's mood and very young learners. These children are different, why they're different, and in what way they are different. Then I will be presenting the toolkit itself. I have 4 categories for you, practical tools that you may use in your classroom starting from tomorrow. Hopefully you won't need it, but still there is a possibility that you might need them. Then what to do when there is a crisis in your classroom and your Monday plan. So actually nothing really scary, I would say. Quite vice versa. So to begin my session with, I wanted to share with you some sort of very personal pedagogical story, I would say. One day, I walked into the classroom and my 4-year-old student was already on the floor, not sitting, laying down on the floor, screaming. The other children were standing around him and they were just staring. They had absolutely no idea what was happening or what to do with that, right? I didn't know what had triggered this condition and nobody did. What I did next wasn't in any lesson plan. I put down my bag and I got on the floor too, in the same position as him, and I stayed there. I copied his movements. I breathed. I waited until he noticed me. And then, very slowly, in the softest voice I could find, I started talking. Not about English, of course, and not about the lesson. I was just acknowledging what I could see, that something bad happened, that it was big, and that I was there, and that that boy was in safety. He stopped screaming eventually, right? Of course, he didn't re-engage with the lesson that day, but he sat quietly. And that, for a full 4-year-old kid in the middle of a full meltdown, well, that's, I would say, everything. Well, what I did that day has a name. It's named co-regulation. And it works because of the way a very young child's brain is actually built and is operating. Before we start here, if I could ask you to do a small poll for me to vote before the start of our main part of the session, how often do you have a child who simply cannot settle? Could you please vote right now? I'll give you a minute for doing that. Let me know if you can do that. Maybe in the chat. Right. Okay. So what I see here is, yeah. So we have basically we have 4 options: every single lesson, most lessons, occasionally, and rarely. So how often do you have a child who simply cannot settle? And if your answer is anything other than rarely, then this session is definitely for you. Right. Okay. So let's put it this way. Think of your classroom, the classroom with very young learners, and tell me who is in your classroom. So when you picture your most challenging very young learner student right now, what do you see? If you could type a couple of words in our chat here on Zoom, I'd appreciate it. Because we all know, right? Then we have a class of very young learners. We can envisage it and we can easily depict what kind of children we have in that classroom, what characters they have, what they do, what they don't, what they like doing, what they hate doing, what they resist doing, right? They are very competitive, all right. Anything else? Any other ideas? The most challenging very young learners, right? You remember when you picture your most challenging very young learner student right now, what do you see? Well, some of them are lazy. Who isn't? Well, I'm lazy too. That's one of the reasons why I use artificial intelligence a lot, to be honest. Too active, talkative. Oh, they are chatterboxes, to be honest, right? Okay, well, they are genuinely interested at the same time, very stubborn and bossy. Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Some of them have ADHD, true. Too emotional, like arguing with a teacher. Right. Okay. We're gonna get back to these responses a little bit later this session. But I think that all of us already realized by now that today very young learners are different, very different. And let's talk about it a little bit more right now. Just a second, give me a moment. It's like really difficult for me to manage with the presentation, but it's fine. I think it's going to be okay. Right. So they are really different nowadays. They are not worse. They are not less behaved. They're just different, neurologically, emotionally, and socially. Today, 4 to 6 year olds, they are not naughty. Well, they are sometimes at some points, but most of the time they're struggling to regulate, right? Here you can see the attention span figures, but before we dive deeper into it, I would like to mention that credible scientific resources do not support a simple fixed minutes by age chart. Instead, attention is rather treated as a measurable cognitive skill that varies by task, depending on the engagement, the level of the engagement of our students, and response time variability. How much time does it take them to respond to this task? Fulfill, fail, whatever the response is. And this skill is assessed through sustained attention. So how much time they can actually stay focused. That's not a universal stopwatch number. I want you to realize that before we go into numbers. So the information here is more of a practical rule of thumb than strict scientific values, right? So if we're talking about 3 years old kids, that gives us the boundaries of between 6 and 8 minutes of attention span. This is the time where they can actually stay focused on the task. So what it means for us as teachers is that we need to use one short activity at a time. We must use transition really often, and we never ask them to sit and listen for more than 5 minutes. Of course, it depends strongly on the type of activity, as I have already mentioned. For example, if we're doing something really engaging, like some sensoric activity, right? It might keep them more focused for a longer time. But again, it depends on the support of a teacher, of an adult in the classroom, and the activity, the type of activity itself. If we're talking about 4 year olds, this gives us about 8 to 12 minutes. It's slightly longer, but still, it means that our classroom needs movement and variety. So we need to segment our activities into 5 to 8 minute slots, approximately. If we're talking about 5, 6 year olds, it gives us 12 to 18 minutes, roughly. So it means that children can sustain a task longer, but only if they are engaged and regulated. Boredom, any sort of overwhelm, collapses the classroom really fast. So these attention span numbers and figures will mean nothing in the classroom. So the rule of a thumb here is 2-3 minutes per year of age for independent tasks. So for example, we have a 4-year-old kid, then we add 3 minutes, and then we get 3, and then we get 7 minutes, right? 5 plus 3, 8, and so on and so forth. But with an adult support and high engagement, upper range extends further, and we need to remember about that. So what is changing and why is changing in nowadays kids? First of all, nowadays children, they have more screen time and less unstructured play. I remember myself being a child. I'm a dinosaur. I remember those time of my childhood where we had no internet, no computer games, no entertainment as it is, right? So basically, I spent most of my time, especially in summer, somewhere outdoors playing with my friends. And there was no guarantee, it wasn't guaranteed that some of my friends would join me. So some days I was spending alone and I was inventing some sort of games for myself. I was trying to entertain myself, like thinking of imagining some games and so on and so forth. So nowadays children do not have that unstructured play. And why it is important to have one? Because unstructured play is where self-regulation develops naturally. Research shows that screen exposure at ages 3 to 5 is associated with decreased organization of brain connections among the attention system, visual processing, the language processing. So it means that the more screen time they have, the more the regions responsible for language processing in their brain is affected in a bad way, unfortunately. Again, as nowadays children do not spend lots of time with their peers, and they are being entertained almost all of the time. Like they're going to trampoline parks, they're going to zoos, they're going to cinemas. Like everything that surrounds them is aimed at entertaining them, right? In some way, developing and entertaining. So they have weaker social skills because they have reduced face-to-face interaction with their peers, I'm sorry. So it means that when we're talking about social skills, they are weaker in such skills as sharing, waiting, losing, and reading others' expressions. So you probably noticed that nowadays children, someone has already mentioned that they are very competitive, but does that mean that they know how to lose? Indicate in the chat, please, if you've noticed this feature that nowadays children struggle to get peace with lose. Hopefully you are still with me. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for responding. The next thing I wanted to note, I'm sorry. Yes, I have the same. Yeah, thank you. Right, so they also have greater sensory sensitivity to noise, to any sort of unpredictability, to unexpected touch or transitions. In one classroom, you may have both the child who cannot stop moving and the one who hides from too much noise and any sort of triggers. Also, nowadays children got quick frustration that turns into tears, sometimes anger, or even withdrawal. It's not manipulation. It means that the child's emotional system is simply overwhelmed. It's too much for them. So these children, we are not judging them right now, and we are not analyzing them from the point of view of psychotherapy or psychologists, because we are not. None of them. But we are teaching these children, and something that we see in our classroom, we have to analyze it and to manage it, to deal with it in some way. So these children are the product. We need to understand that this is not because they are worse, they're just different. They are the product of a particular moment in history, of a particular context. They are arriving at our classroom having already used up significant regulatory resources before they walk through the door. What this actually looks like in our real classroom. First of all, I wanted to mention that the word dysregulation isn't widely discussed in ELT methodology yet. It comes from developmental psychology and child neuroscience. But it means, what it means is just simply this. The child's emotional physical state is too activated for them to learn. They haven't chosen this. They cannot talk themselves out of it. And telling them to calm down simply won't help. So what we can see in the classroom, what we might think about this sort of behavior and what it might actually be. So, for example, the child cannot sit still, like touching everything, rolling on the floor, constantly moving, right? We may think as teachers that this child is naughty or attention seeking or badly raised. What it might actually be is that the body of this child is looking for sensory input to regulate itself. Movement is not the problem. It's the attempted solution, the only one that the child may apply in this particular situation. The next one, the sample of behavior is that the child stares blankly, like tabula rasa, daydreams, doesn't respond when called, right? So we may think that this child is being inattentive or not listening or not even trying. In real life, what might be happening is that the child is simply overwhelmed. The brain has gone quiet to protect itself from too much input. The next sample of behavior is the child cries suddenly, like out of the blue, apparently for no reason. We may think that this child is oversensitive, maybe dramatic, like drama queen or drama king, manipulative perhaps. What might be actually happening? The child was already at capacity before arriving. So the smallest additional demand towards this child, tips them over. And that's finished. The brain goes offline. Next, child may laugh or make silly noises at the wrong moment, right? So we may say, okay, this child is being disrespectful or showing off. What might be actually happening is that often anxiety or nervousness expressing itself through the only release valve available. So this is the only way the child may vent. Sometimes the child may push, hit, or even bite another child. So we may say that the child is aggressive or it's a problem child. Of course, we try to avoid this, but we may think, right? So what in real life might be happening is that usually it might be a communication attempt, frustration that has no language yet, or sensory overwhelm with no other outlet, no possible way out. And the last sample of behavior I wanted to talk about is that the child goes completely silent and withdrawn. So we may say that, okay, this child is shy, passive, or simply not engaged. And I think that here is the root of many of the pieces of advice to very young learners. You must engage and interest the child. It's like leading to teachers, dancing and clapping and doing whatever they can, just jumping out of themselves, trying to engage these children. But the problem, what might be actually really happening is that a shutdown, the nervous system has moved into a freeze response, the least visible, but often the most serious signal. And to be honest, the child who shuts down is the one that the most often missed, because we tend to worry about the explosive child. The frozen one sits quietly and is overlooked quite often. So we need to take care of that as well and bear it in mind. Right. Before we move on, I would like you to proceed with another poll. The question is, which of these behaviors is hardest for you to respond to calmly? I'm going to be sharing the link to this poll in our chat on Zoom here right now. Please vote. And here I have the options as, so which of these behaviors is the hardest for you to respond to calmly? And I have four options: a child having a full meltdown, low-level constant disruption building across the lesson, a child who withdraws and goes completely silent, and the whole group spiraling when one child is dysregulated. So one dysregulated child causes the total mess in the classroom. Let me check your answers. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah, it's pretty difficult, I must say. It's pretty difficult to manage a child in a full meltdown because it's rather a psychological problem, not for a teacher to solve. But still, at times we need to manage this problem, and I will be talking about that a little bit later in our session. So let's talk about a dysregulated child. Why they cannot, these dysregulated children, why they cannot acquire a foreign language? What supports this statement? What stands behind it? A dysregulated child isn't refusing to learn. They simply cannot learn yet. The front part of our brain, the part that is responsible for focus, decision making, following instructions, and processing new language, foreign language acquisition, is the last part to fully mature in a human being. So in 3 to 6 year olds, this area is still very much under construction. It will not be fully mature until well into adulthood. When a child feels unsafe, overwhelmed, or emotionally flooded, their brain shifts its resources away from that front, like thinking part, and towards the survival systems at the center. So the body goes into a kind of alert mode. And in an alert mode, learning a foreign language is simply not a priority the brain will allow. This is not about the child being difficult. It is the brain doing exactly what it evolved to do: prioritize safety over everything else. There is also a specific language dimension here when we talk about neuroscience from this point of view. Research on screen time, again, I'm getting back to that problem again and again. So research on screen time and early childhood brain development shows that high screen exposure at ages 3 to 5 is linked to reduced organization in the connections between the attention system and the language processing regions of the brain. In other words, the very natural pathways that a child needs for acquiring a foreign language are among those most affected by the screen time in a negative way, unfortunately, as I have already mentioned. So regulation is not a pastoral concern. It is not something to hand to parents or for a support assistant, if we have one in a classroom, of course. It is a prerequisite for language acquisition, and we must know that. And it belongs inside of our lesson, before our lesson, and sometimes instead of our lesson. So what a co-regulation actually is. Co-regulation, you remember that boy that was on the floor when I entered the classroom, and I used co-regulation without even knowing that. So co-regulation works through mirror neurons and the autonomic nervous system. The child's brain syncs with our brain, with the brain of a teacher, through our breathing, muscle tension, and physical presence next to the child or in the same space, right? Our calm is not a strategy, it's a biological signal. It tells the child's nervous system the environment is safe. You can come back now. This is why getting on the floor in that situation actually worked. Not because it was a technique, because it communicated wordlessly, physically, neurologically, that I wasn't a threat, that I was present, and that I was regulated myself as a teacher. So when we talk about the children and get back to the slide about types of behaviors, what we see, what we may think, and what is actually maybe happening, you remember the question, what kind of the most challenging very young learner you can think of right now in your classroom? So we had children with ADHD here. If you have something to add right now to that list, you may do it now in the chat on Zoom. Of course, too emotional, arguing with teachers, special needs. Yeah, that's the whole realm of learners, because teaching English to students with special educational needs is a challenge, and that's something that we need to be ready for if we are focusing on that professional path development, right? And some of them are lazy, so maybe they are not lazy, maybe they are overwhelmed or already tired and their capacity. So talking about the instruments, what to do with these children? We have already discussed what changed, why changed, how we see that in the classroom. So what to do with all of that? I've prepared, like I've broken down the possible tools that you may apply in your classroom into 4 groups. And for each groups, you're going to have specific examples, situations when to use to apply these instruments, how to apply them in the language classroom, and an online adaptation if it is possible, because it's not possible everywhere for every kind of situation. And if you are brave enough to teach very, 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 very young learners online, well, that's just, amazing, I would say. So the first category is relational tools. So we're now talking about our nervous system. It is the first instrument that we have. It is already here with us in the room. So before any technique, we're going to use this. So the first tool here is our soft voice and slow speech. When we may use it? When child arriving already dysregulated, and the whole group, because of that child, is getting loud, going mad, right? How we usually apply? So we drop our voice rather than raising it, because the first reaction would be like, hey, stop it, right? But here, what would work better is to lower our voice, slow your pace to half of your normal speed, stillness in your body. Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but the group will follow. Trust me, I've tried many, many, many times. It works. Then the next instrument here is eye contact, soft. We are not staring at the child. The child, for example, is on the edge, restless, unfocused, about to tip. So we give a soft gaze to a child, not intense stare, because hard eye control contact, I'm sorry, it might be read as a threat. So we need to hold it warmly, briefly, until the child meets us, right? The next instrument here is physical mirroring. So when we have acute meltdown and there is no one, absolutely no one else in the classroom to help you with, the child is on the floor or in a corner or turned away, then we get to their physical level, match their posture loosely. We don't speak immediately. We wait until they notice us, and then breath visibly and slowly. And then the last instrument here that I've included into this category is naming what we see. For example, the child withdraws and shuts down. So we may say something like, I can see something big is happening for you. So we are not asking questions, no providing solutions. We are not reasoning. We are just acknowledging that something is going on. We notice it and we're letting the child know that. The emotional brain needs to feel seen before it can re-engage. If we're talking about online adaptation here at this point, so our face and voice are our only relational instruments in this case. So we need to speak more slowly than it feels natural. We need to feel the camera frame with our face, and we need to reduce background noise. Our calm needs to travel through a screen, and we need to make it more deliberate. The trick is here that it requires us to be regulated first. If we're stressed or frustrated, our body will communicate it before our words do. So we need to take a breath before we approach this technique. Literally, like, and then we start. My next category here is the body-based tools. Movements, breathing, physical discharge. So the first one I included here, it's a very funny one, but it always works. Shaking like a wet dog. So, for example, children arriving with high energy, unable to settle into the lesson, that you just cannot start your lesson, right? So it's a full body movement. It discharges physical tension. So we do it ourselves first as teachers, and the children will follow. And then we may move to breathing technique, breathing exercises. Sleeping bear breath. When we may use it as a transition between some activities in the lesson, or when we are having a mid-lesson energy spike. So we slowly, heavily growling exhale, and then you will see the children will like focus on you because this is something really, really different from something they used to seeing. So this is embodied. It's playful. It works even if children don't fully participate. Modeling this activity alone is regulating itself. So you may use it even without expecting children to mirror it, to follow it. The next one is balloon breathing. When you see that your group is starting to spiral collectively, you may use this one. So you raise your arms slowly, visually focusing, and you inhale, the balloon fills. And then you float down on exhale, right? So this is bilateral. It's slow, it's predictable. So it can be done actually by when seated or when standing as well. Then quite similar activity, but also connected with breathing, is called butterfly breathing. You may use it as an opening ritual before you actually start the lesson, the whole slot of teaching English, right? So when your arms rise like wings on inhale and lower on exhale. Unfortunately, I cannot inhale and exhale at the same time when talking. Well, not multifunctional anyway. So it is repeatable, it is familiar, it's whole body. So if we build it into the lesson structure, it becomes a predictable anchor for our lesson. It works really well. For online adaptation, as for online adaptation of this group of instruments, we may ask our children to stand up if it is possible. It works well on camera, movement is visible, and mirroring still occurs. We may mute children during the activity, the exercise itself, if audio feedback, if you can hear like it is, and it is an issue. So the key thing here is that we need to build these activities into transitions and lesson openings, not only as crisis responses, the tools to manage the crisis if it occurs, but we must remember that regulation is preventive, not only reactive. So we can do it incorporating these tools into our routine, classroom routine. My next category is sensory tools. So we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Sensory input, we must realize that sensory input can either dysregulate or regulate, depending on the child and on the tool. The goal is to give the nervous system something predictable and safe to focus on. So here I have 5 tools, I think, yes, 5 tools. So the first one is finger tracing, and I wanted just to show you, probably you know all of that tools, but I just wanted to show you it will save our time here. Let me know if you can see my screen. So basically it looks like that. So basically, during this activity, children are tracing the lines, are trying to copy the lines and follow the lines that they are seeing on their screen, just in the air with their fingers, like that, like focusing and moving along the music. There are many, 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 many videos like that on the internet. So with different music, different pace, different level of complexity for different ages, right? So you can just Google finger tracing brain break, and it will give you lots of things like that. The next one was the next instrument in this category is heavy toy or weighted object. So when a child with high sensory seeking behavior arrives to our classroom, the child who cannot stop moving. So a heavy, soft toy is placed on the lap or on the child's shoulders. Deep pressure activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So the child does not need to understand why. You do not explain it to the child, it just works. The next one is about rubber or texture toys. We're talking about fidgets, we're talking about puppets. Child who needs to keep hands busy to remain focused. This is for this case, or for low-level disruption, for example. So we place this sort of toys right on the child's desk, and we must explain to the classroom that this is not a toy. Some children focus better when their hands are occupied. So we need to explain it to the classroom, and we need to make sure that they don't see it that this is as a reward or something like that, right? So we need to establish this distinguish with the group. The next one is noise reducing headphones. When the child is overwhelmed by classroom noises, when group doing an activity that generates loud sound, we may offer, not impose, but offer the headphones. Some children will resist. Others will find them transformative. Well, we'll just, keep the one pair available and present it as a normal classroom resource. And the last instrumental, the last tool here is rubber band on chair legs. You know this. I'm pretty sure you saw these rubber bands, fitness rubber bands that people are using for doing some fitness, for some sport. So when we have a child with high physical wrestleness who cannot keep still in a seat, we may use these to manage it somehow. So we stretch a thick rubber band between the front two legs of the chair, and the child can push feet against this rubber rhythmically. So physical discharge without leaving the seat or disrupting others. So it might work well. So as for online adaptation, unfortunately, here it's pretty challenging as sensory tools are almost exclusively on site. For online very young learners teaching, I would ask parents to have a small basket of sensory objects near the child before the lesson begins. It might work this way. Some children with sensory sensitivity find touch-based tools aversive. They don't like it. So we always offer these tools, these toys, but we never impose, we never insist on that. We just watch the child's response and adjust to it. And the last category here is like I'm starting running a little, not to take lots of your precious time outside of the boundaries of my time limits. So the last category is rhythmic and predictability tools. So rhythm is one of the most powerful tools for neurological regulation available at all. Like it's predictable, it's repetitive, it's synchronized movement, creates a shared rhythm in a group. So regulating children collectively, not one by one, not just individually. So what belongs here? The whole group opening chant works well, works always. Just make sure you change the chant like from time to time, not to get too bored. So we start every lesson with this chant. Children arriving at different energy levels. In this way, they come to the same level. You regulate them, right? So same chant, same actions, every lesson. So predictability itself is regulating. So the child who arrives dysregulated will often synchronize within 30 to 60 seconds of a familiar rhythmic ritual. Mid-lesson brain break. So when it happens that energy is flagging or rising after 10 or 12, 15 minutes of focused activity, we may use a 60-second full body reset, not as an reward, but as a neurological necessity, just because it is necessary in this particular classroom. So we just build it into our timing, and it's not negotiable. We have it in the middle of our class. The next one is transition chant. It's very important. It's very small, but very often underestimated, as for me. Because moving between activities is the highest risk moment for dysregulation. This is where the dysregulation commonly occurs. So a short specific chant that signals we are changing now, we are moving on. Transitions are unpredictable themselves. A chant makes them predictable. So it reduces anxiety, it reduces disruption. For some children who like really want to know everything, what's going on, where they are in the lesson, who rely on pictures. We may use a visual schedule. You know, this sort of children, this sort of students, the type of students that always ask, what are we doing now? Where are we now, right? So simple icons showing the lesson sequence to them, and then we point to it at the start, then we return to it during transition. So again, getting back to the fact, predictability is regulation. And then as the last tool here in this category, I mentioned unexpected teacher action. Of course, we're not jumping out in front of to the front of the class with "Ooh," and roaring to the class. No, but when you see that the whole group is spiraling, like noise is rising, focus gone, one child dysregulation is spread into the whole group, so we do something completely unexpected and calm. This is the main point here. Calm. We whisper. We freeze. Or we may pick up an object silently and look at it with intense curiosity. So the group's attention in this way shifts and the spiral breaks. Then we return to a familiar rhythm, to a familiar routine, and to the lesson itself, right? For online adaptation, it works really well when adapted for online lesson because chants work well on camera, to be honest. So children can stand and move. The collective synchronization is weaker because they are not sharing the physical space, right? But the individual regulation affect remains with you. Think of your groups of very young learners right now, after everything that I've shared with you, and tell me, like, think of one child, the most challenging one in your group, and type one category or one tool you try with them first. I would like to ask you to share these thoughts in our chat on Zoom right now. Yes, I will show this slide. Okay, I will share it. Okay. So, and the last part, basically, that I was going to talk about is um, about the moment that every very young learner's teacher dreads. A child in a full acute dysregulation, and the rest of group watching, and the lesson plan that is now completely irrelevant. Let's go there. So what to do and what not to do, which is more important from my point of view here. Three things that make it worse. So what do we need to avoid doing in such a situation? So the first one is reasoning, trying to talk to a child and say, why are you crying? Use your words, explain that to me. I have no idea what's going on and blah, 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 blah. So we must remember that at this very moment, the prefrontal cortex is totally offline. So there are no words available. It means that if you use reasoning, the situation escalates. The second thing is threatening consequences. If you don't stop, we won't do the game, for example. The stressed brain cannot process future consequences. It's just simply too complex for it at that very moment. So it means that this technique will also escalate the situation. And the third thing to avoid doing is ignoring. So hoping, it resolves, disappears while continuing the lesson. Usually it doesn't happen this way. So sometimes it works. Yeah, let's be honest. But more often the child escalates and then the group fractures. And so what do we need to do? What are the things to do here in this situation? So the first thing is we need to reduce stimulation. We need to lower our voice, slow our movements, remove demands entirely from this child, right? We need to move closer without crowding. And there is nothing we should expect from this child right now except to exist safely. The next thing, we need to connect to this child. So we need to get to their physical level, eye to eye, mirror their posture loosely. Then we need again make our voice soft, name what we see without any sort of interpretation, like something big happened. I'm here. No questions. We're not providing solutions. We're just present, indicating that we are here and sharing the same space. Then we need to wait a little and redirect. How to do that? So we need to wait for the first sign that the child is settling. Slowing breath, reduced sound, first eye contact, and then offer something simple and low demand. Like, for example, would you like to hold this for me? Or something even simpler, like not a return to the lesson, no, but just a next small step for this particular child. And meanwhile, what's happening with the rest of the group? This is the practical question nobody talks about enough. Because we cannot, as teachers, we cannot abandon 4, 6, 8 other children to manage one. It's simply not possible in our job. So what we need to do here is to have a designated independent activity that children already know, familiar with, for example, drawing, a puzzle, a familiar coloring sheet with English vocabulary, something like that. So it exists in your classroom exactly for this particular moment. Or we may use a visual signal, a specific object or card that our children were trained to recognize as the signal that the teacher is busy. It is independent time now. And then when the crisis is away, after the crisis, right? Then we need to briefly acknowledge the group. Thank you for being so calm. We don't explain what happened. We don't dramatize it or over explain. We just move forward, right? And this is the hardest scenario for online adaptation as well, because to be honest, like our main tools are voice and stillness, right? So in the situation of a full acute dysregulation, we need to invite a parent or a caregiver who is with a child to step in physically. You, as a teacher, manage the group on the screen. They manage the child in the room. This is how it works. So what is beyond this toolkit? What I wanted to say on the top of that. We are language teachers. We are not psychiatrists. We are not psychologists, not therapists. Knowing where our role ends is as important as knowing what's inside it. So one difficult lesson, okay, we use our toolkit. A pattern over several weeks with one particular child, we need to apply a warm, factual conversation with parents, naming what happened, when, and what you observed. Of course, without any diagnosis, we are not certified to do that. If the situation escalating frequently and intensively, we may suggest the specialist support here at this point. And if there is a physical danger to the child or others, immediate adult backup. Lesson stops right now at this very moment. So, thinking of everything that I have already shared with you, which tool would you try first in your lesson? I will show you the tools, the groups of tools right now. So you have them in front of you on your screen: relational, body-based, sensory, or rhythmic. So if you could share what kind of tools would you like to use? Would you try using in your classroom starting from tomorrow? I would appreciate it. And while you're thinking on that, I just wanted to close my session with the words that that child I told you about at the beginning, he didn't need a better lesson plan. He needed to feel safe first. And that's all any of them need, to be honest. And most of the time, that's you. Thank you very much for attending my session. I'm ready to answer your questions. If there are any. So,
I have one. Can I ask?
Yes, of course.
I understand what I should do as a teacher. What about parents? Should I talk to them about this behavior? They often want to hear something about their kids, and should I be honest? Should I lie? So, because some parents can be a bit blind about their kids' behavior.
Yeah, they can be resistant. They don't want to notice it. I do agree with you. This is the art, I would say, of giving a feedback. Um, when giving a feedback, we basically rely on the formula kiss, kick, kiss. So we say something nice, then we say something that we actually want to share with them, and then we say something nice again, a different thing, a different point. This way, they will notice it and digest it a little bit easier than you might expect them to. If you notice something once, as I have already mentioned, that you may skip it, right? You use your tool, any of the tools that you feel like might be convenient or applicable to this particular situation. But if it repeats and occurs like on a regular basis, then yes, you need to talk to parents. I noticed something. I noticed that Oleshko, for example, is like hitting other children when he probably feels overwhelmed. What have you noticed this sort of behavior at home or in the kindergarten? What do you think? Let's talk together. Do you have any life hacks or recommendation for me as a teacher? So just involve them in this situation, share it with them, and ask them for their advice. Maybe they know what to do because they like spend their life with this child, right, on everyday basis. So maybe they know what triggers these situations with this kind of behavior. Maybe they have some tricks or life hacks how to manage it when it just starts, how to prevent it. If they don't know, you may come up with your own idea, share it with them if they are like not confronting it, of course. And then like finishing it, polishing it with the phrase that let's work together. You work at home and I do whatever I can do and manage it in the classroom in the sake of make the whole thing, the whole process beneficial for the child.
Thank you.
Emphasizing this is not about your comfort. This is not about the comfort of other children.
Mm.
This is about the success of the whole story, why they come, why they spend their time there, why they spend their money on that, like to make it more effective. I hope
Yes.
I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions here?
maybe I can ask one more.
Oh,
I'm just
please
curious.
do.
Maybe you can recommend some books which teachers should read about this.
Well, unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend any of the books because these changes are happening right now. And to be honest, what you may find is articles or maybe some particular webinars or seminars on the topic. But the thing is that this is ongoing process. And with this amount of information around us and the world that is changing really fast and the context that we all exist in, I don't think that you find a book, a very, a profound scientific study or research on that. No, I don't think so. It's just about a practical thing and maybe referring to some neuroscience, neurolinguistic researches. That's the only thing I may recommend you. Ask your colleagues and share your experience with your colleagues is always a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And curse even at their parents in the corridor, and the parents don't know what to do. Well, my idea of that situation, of one of the reasons why the situation may occur, is that of a so-called soft parenting approach to raising children, when parents allow their children, to do lots of things and they do not say no, they do not show how to behave properly or appropriately. I don't know whether it is good or not. It's just the context we have right now. And we are not therapists, we are English teachers. In this case, we need to settle our rules at the very beginning when we start to work with a group or with this particular child. And we need to talk those rules through with children in the group and with parents as well outside of the classroom. And you need to clearly state that you are the boss in that classroom and you are the only person they listen to. You manage this group in the classroom, they manage their children outside of the classroom. This is how it works. That's it, full stop. Otherwise, if the child cannot be handled in the group and the child is a burden, I hate saying that, but prevents other children from learning, then there should be something done. It's not just possible. You cannot just sit silently and pretend that nothing is going on, because otherwise the process doesn't make any sense for any participant in the group. Yep, Marina?
I'm sorry, maybe my question would be a bit weird, but have you ever given up on a student, like saying, "Okay, I'm done. Um, I'm just letting them go, you know?"
Yes, yes, I have. Do you want a particular example?
No, I just wanted to hear yes, because
Yes, yes, yes,
because
I did it.
recently, because recently I came across this like idea that if you can't do anything with a student, then you are a bad teacher. But I guess like this is possible because sometimes you try everything and nothing works.
No, sometimes it's just not possible. Like, for example, okay, I see that. It would be nice if you share, guys, I'm already outside of my time limits. If you're okay with that, I will share it quickly. If you are not, then I will just shut up and then you come to my direct and into my Instagram. I may share it over there. So just let me know if you're okay with 2 extra minutes. All right. Okay. So I had a student in my very young learners group. I had 15 children in that group, and one of the children wasn't diagnosed with like a child on autistic spectrum, but it was pretty clear for all of the teachers. And the thing is that it takes a long time to be acknowledged as a person with autistic spectrum. So it took me half of a year trying to manage the situation and find different approaches using different tools asking for assistance and, having multiple sessions with the psychologist and so on and so forth. But I noticed that it's too much for this child. He was triggered and overwhelmed by any loud sound, by clapping, stomping. It was simply too much for him. Right now, I'm currently working at a bilingual kindergarten teaching English as a foreign language to children from 3 to 6. So every day they have a 4 hours slot of English. It doesn't mean, of course, that they're being instructed 4 hours throughout the whole 4 hours. We have different activities. We are walking outside. We are having lunch. We are having breakfast. We are playing and blah, 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 blah. Still, it was too much for him to have all of these activities in a foreign language. Then we, of course, for 3 years old, we were singing, we were dancing, we were stopping, we were running, we were screaming, not all of the time, but a lot. It was simply overwhelming for him. So at some point, I noticed that whatever I do, it's just not manageable in a group setting. One-to-one, perfect, fantastic. In a group setting, too much. And the child suffered. He used to have 1, 2, even 3 full acute meltdowns. So, like, it broke my heart. Literally, I had to talk to parents about that. Are you still here?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. It was so like valuable.
You're welcome. So, if nothing else comes up, then let me again thank you for attending my session and spending some of your precious time here with me talking about very young learners. And thank you, Daria. Thank you, Anna, once more for having me here as a speaker.
Alona, thank you so much for the session. I think it was interesting. I mean, if some of the teachers do not work with very young learners but have kids, I think it was useful too, actually. Really.
I hope.
Yeah,
I hope so.
it was. It was. Alona, thank you so much. I wish you to have a great day and hope to see you later at our events.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.